Hi, this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy, week 9 of 2013 video blog. This week we're going to talk about the container, or being held in a container, or being held in something larger than ourselves. I was speaking with my girlfriend the other day about some things about really surrendering to a power or a force greater than ourselves. And there's a saying in one of the Gospels. I don't like citing the Bible per se, but I like the idea of pointers, and there's a saying that I like that kind of helps me understand this, and that's, when two or more gather in my name, there I am in the midst of them. And I feel that's a great pointer to that, the container of relationship, two people. And there's a third thing that's created, and that's the connection between the two people. It could be even between a person and a plant, or a person and his higher self. I believe that's what they call the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Son is the manifested being, the Father is the unmanifest spirit, and the Holy Ghost is that which can traverse or communicate between the two. And so when we talk about a container, I was doing Bikram yoga a few weeks ago and realizing that I've been in a lot of containers in my life, healing containers, what we call healing retreats, what we would call yoga classes, what we would call meditation groups, what we would call classes, what we would call relationships. So being held in a container, to me, for me in this class, was realizing that at the beginning we were all doing a certain type of breath work or pranayama at the beginning. So we were all inhale together, we all exhale together, in a sequence over many minutes. And I realized through a retreat I was at the Mankind Project called the New Warrior Training Adventure, or the NWTA, was a very powerful container, and surrendering to this container, or the greater wisdom of many minds are greater than one, or the synergy of many, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. I remember Spock said once in a Star Trek, and I wouldn't even term it that in this way, but I would say that that's a great pointer, that the wisdom of the many outweighs the wisdom of the one. And when we surrender to this in health, we begin to see more and more miracles occurring, and we surrender to what the wisdom of nature is. And I had a video blog about the mind of nature. And when I say the mind of nature, this is something that we can't even comprehend, but we can surrender to it, we can feel it, because I believe the wisdom in any problem lies within the problem itself. In other words, it's accessed within the moment. So like right now, there's each moment that's occurring, and when new people come in to see me, or when I meet a new person, I try and always start with the question mark, I don't know, and a blank slate, instead of going based on my judgments or preconceived notions about following a cookbook protocol for even arthritis or HIV or AIDS or cancer, any of that. I think that there's a real important piece here about starting with that. And so the container fits in that the container has a bit of wisdom. So in the Bikram yoga class, really surrendering to this other intelligence of the container, which quote unquote the facilitator or the teacher is doing their best to bring about a greater wisdom to each person through this. And I find that something that occurred in the way of the peaceful warrior that Socrates mentioned to Dan Millman was humor, paradox, and change. And humor was being used by this particular teacher. And I think that if we can see the humor in our situation, we often allow sort of an expansion to occur. And so when I talk about the container also, I'm talking about something that is bigger than us. So when we feel often weighed down or depressed or overwhelmed, it's often because the issue itself is bigger than we are. So how do we get bigger than the issue? Often when we feel bigger than the issue itself, we don't feel swallowed up by it, and there's a certain lucidity and clarity in it, that it doesn't swallow us up into identifying with it anymore, and we feel more integrated and coordinated in it, and it doesn't lure us into disease or negative states of being, so to speak. And that's the dance, really, is that I don't think any of us really come in wanting to remember, so to speak. I think that there's a certain amount of divine forgetfulness, as one teacher puts it, and we forget so we can have the adventure, and then we remember. But if we remember it always, then we may not necessarily have the experiences that we have as humans. And I think the container helps us remember or get bigger. And sometimes it's hard to take that. I was in a relational group last night called Relating Games, and one of the things I noted was that, this man came to me and he really wanted to express something, and so there's a certain power and vulnerability I've seen in my men's work, and really being able to be vulnerable and open to being received and receiving from others, even if it means criticism, because oftentimes our greatest critics can lead us to our greatest health, and that's the value of the container also, is the container of two people or the container of a larger group where we may feel confronted. And defensiveness is something that I've had to look at a lot in my own life, especially with family, when I get confronted about issues, when I become defensive, and that's a flag for me now that there's a certain inner GPS meter we all have inside, and when that meter begins to feel tension or lack of ease and flow, then it's a sign that something may need to be looked at. So being held in a container, think about your containers in your life, because you're always basically in one. Planet Earth itself is a container. The universe is a container. Your house is a container. Your family, your primary relationships, whatever work you have, albeit some of these containers, what is it that this container is trying to accomplish? Like a lot of good businesses have sort of a mission statement. So what is the mission of the company you work for? What are the founding fathers and the leaders, what is their agenda? What is their primary purpose? I think the Native Americans really had a great container this way, in that they thought about what actions would work out 7 generations into the future. And they really believed in the wisdom of their ancestors, and that their ancestors still lived in a way that they could access. And I think that that's what we see in channels, is they're tuning into some other planes of existence where our deceased loved ones may be speaking. There's no way of knowing this for sure, but I feel a good channel, and I've seen many good ones. They are offering us, with the minimal filter of their own ego, some wisdom of beings that want to help. So ultimately, this is not something that we can really find much in science, so one of the reasons for these video blogs is just to kind of open up the thought processes things that I think about a lot, and offering that humbly to those who want to listen. And so that's why we have ritual. We invoke at the beginning of a ritual, we go into the ritual itself, and then we close. And the things I see in my weekly men's group is this: we invoke, and then there's a certain wisdom and presence available that's greater than the group, and then we close this off and let them go. Just like in the ancient days, the men went off to war, and then when they were brought home, there were certain people, and even women, that would help them get out of the war state of mind. And I love this idea of invoking, going into or deep into the process, and then closing it off, so that there are clear boundaries about what it is we're doing, and moving on from one thing to the next. Such as me starting my day doing yoga, and at least offering a few moments of invoking things greater than myself, and asking for help, and really not remaining in the knowing so much as it is in curiosity and surrender to things coming in, wisdom greater than myself. So I'm going to wish you all a wonderful week, and always open to feedback and inquiries, and even requests for future video blogs, things people might want to have addressed or have things talked about. Even interviews are great. So I'm going to sign off now. Craig Lane with Health Alchemy. I can be reached via healthalchemy.com, HealthAlchemy, and we do various programs with people, visit by visit, 3-visit programs, 6-visit, 9-visit programs, where we look at health and all of the things that go into health, not just physiology, but the emotions, the spirit, and making slow, gradual changes. Craig Lane signing off, week 9 video blog. Lots of love to you all.